On violence against women, access to justice, racialized migrant, indigenous issues, and disability rights. Our work involves designing community-based social development, applied research projects with international and national organizations. Doris has taught community development courses at a variety of post-secondary institutions. She has written training resources and advised national and international NGOs on how to conduct effective community-based research and development strategies. Doris is also an actress, playwright, screenwriter, and filmmaker, and is particularly proud of her work on the films This Beggar's Description, The R Word, and the comedy, apparently is hilarious, Healing Rani. Favorite theatrical work includes Gandhi High, Doris Does Damage, and most recently her play A Tender Path. And just reading that makes me realize I'm a slacker and I have slouched my way through my entire life, accomplishing absolutely nothing. No, Doris, thank you so much. Wonderful to have you. Rainbow Hunt, Rainbow giveaway. I've known Rainbow for years and years and years. Famous or infamous, we're not sure. Maybe a little both, depending on who you talk to. Rainbow is a transgender woman born and raised in Scarborough and is labeled with an intellectual disability, learning disability. She is a community activist and artist, and she is also the project director and founder of Rainbow Pride in Scarborough. Yay! She works closely with youth who identify as LGBTQ. I always forget it because I have about 6 of those. With all types of disabilities and from many diverse communities. Her work gives the youth the opportunity to build community and youth engagement, enhance independence, and gives them a voice to fight for their rights and work together. Together they create a safe space for everyone to get together, build friendships, network, share services and supports, explore employment opportunities, and find their voice and freedom. Their activities include community outreach and presentations that support learning together, setting goals, and addressing issues that lead to isolation. Rainbow's work also includes advocacy concerning disability, parenting, and intimate relationship work. So welcome, Doris and Rainbow. Thank you. So Doris.
Okay, cool. What is something you would like the audience to know about you?
I don't know, James, that was a pretty thorough bio. A couple of things I didn't want the audience to know about. I guess the one thing is that I'm a mother of 4 children. And Rainbow, what is something you would like the audience to know about you?
I would like the audience to know that I am one of the survivors from domestic violence in a relationship in the past 4 years ago. And I wrote a book about it and sold 200 copies in less than 2 months. For Peter. Okay, what groups of women and what groups of women and T-girls do you work with and why?
So, with Iris, we've been, I would say the last 8 years, we've been really focusing on really specifically 4 populations of women and gender non-conforming people. We work very specifically with Indigenous women, refugee, racialized refugee women, and women that are labeled with either an intellectual or psychosocial mental health disability. The reason why that's come about is in lots of years of doing violence against women work, gender-based violence work, it became very clear that these 4 populations were usually not at the table, and if they weren't supported to be there in terms of being able to articulate and express where they're coming from in their particular issues. And even within, like, we've been using the term, I'm not too crazy about it, but it kind of sums it up, marginalized with the marginalized, understanding that populations have been marginalized rather than are marginalized. But because even like in the larger discussions around women with disability, often women with intellectual disabilities are not being supported to really articulate their particular issues. And that also includes women with mental health, particularly mental health and addictions. And then with immigrant and refugee women, often over the years, particularly in the violence against women sector, they've been just kind of, you always hear immigrant and refugee women. And yet, when you're at the table, it's very predominantly looking at this group very broadly and the very specific experiences of refugee women coming from war-torn countries, conflict areas, imperial-fueled wars, etc., the immense trauma and loss that they experience only to come into a very racialized system here. So it's a very different experience than immigrants that come in into other forms. So because of that, and they were populations that are not only not at the table and their issues are rarely heard, but they also experience some of the highest rates of, violence, poverty, homelessness, vulnerability to trafficking, et cetera, et cetera. So we have been for the last I really think since 2011 we started working exclusively with those populations. Oh, my turn. So what group of people do you work with?
So the group of lovely folks I work with is I work with youth 29 and under, basically youth with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and also women as well. Like I would say a mix, women who are basically identified as newcomers, refugees, immigrants, BIPOC, bisexual, indigenous people of color, and I work with some of these youth 29 and under, and they share the stories about the struggles that they face with violence in back home where they're from, and they come and share this with me, and I give them that opportunity space for them to talk in front of an audience of like folks who want to get educated and know what's happening, and then I also pay them for their time, which is very hard to pay for someone's time to be speaking or any kind of performance or anything. So I work with mainly like with people with disabilities and that are LGBTQ. Also, allyships are always amazing a part of the project and the work and supporting. And yeah, so I work with lots of youth and men with women, and I meet up with them and we talk about their stories before. Our experiences together about the violence I face and what they face, so we kind of like support one another and go for coffee. It's a very comfort thing, or anywhere that's like nice and warm and comfortable. That's the group I work with mainly. It's mostly LGBTQ, all different types of disabilities and developmental disabilities. Also, women who use drugs and harm reduction is the main thing that we practice. We don't discriminate drug users or sex workers or any kind of things like that. But mostly with like, youth that are 29 and under with disabilities of all gender, race, sex, ethnicity. I said the word properly, good. Yeah. Doris, what's your experience with trauma while working with these groups?
Thank you. So I guess the first, I made some notes here just so I make sure I get it all, and James will tell us if we're going over. Really, I think the most important starting point with these particular populations is to understand trauma in the context of being historically shaped, and something that was how we built society was based on their experience of segregation. So, for example, with Indigenous people, of course, we know starting with the Indian Act, starting with the Royal Proclamation, the Indian Act, residential schools, the 60s schools, et cetera, with refugee women, as I said, imperialist fueled wars in their own country, largely coming from the Western countries, creating displacement only to come into a history of racialized immigration policies and conditions here. And then, of course, people, particularly women with intellectual disabilities and women with mental health issues, a history of mass institutionalization or incarceration, and the practices of eugenics, which is still happening today in its modern day iterations with things like medical assistance in dying, etc. So that's the first place in dealing with trauma, is to understand that these conditions then set the conditions for poverty and violence, and that's where the trauma is coming from. I think it's also important that we understand that trauma isn't a one-off experience. Like one of the biggest differences working with these populations compared to others is it's not, the first 5 years of my marriage or things like that. It is something that they're born into. They're born into conditions of trauma, and trauma walks with these populations every day as they're, trying to access and all the things that we need to live. And also that trauma is reinforced daily as well. And really important is that in the work is we don't separate the issues of dealing with poverty and looking at violence and looking at housing, looking at homelessness, any of the issues. They're all interconnected, and so we find it really problematic when they're separated, looking at the issue of violence against women. The other thing is I wanted to mention, talking about the whole idea of intersectionality and what that means. And I guess, in the simplest terms, it's people that are living with multiple experiences of marginalization. But I think really important, particularly in the populations that we're working with, is, and when I say we, IRIS just plays a convening role. Really, the people that are taking the lead are the grassroots, frontline service providers like the Native Women's Resource Center in Toronto, like Partners for Planning, like Cross Boundaries and Ethno-Racial Mental Health, the organizations that are seeing this every single day and supporting women and others, dealing with these issues. And so I think it's important in the discussion of intersectionality, like, of course, a lot of the people that are involved in our community development projects are, for example, Indigenous women that are also living with mental health and addictions, or are, women with intellectual disabilities that may be trans, maybe experience, extreme poverty and whatnot, but that we understand the intersections not as kind of coming in separately, and there's these separate experiences, but they're constituted, they're co-constituted, and it's hard to separate it. You come into the room with all those experiences, and they manifest in different ways. And so the problem we find problematic is just like treating the issues separate, treating, like we're working on violence against women, we're working on housing, we're anti-poverty activists. We also feel treating these populations separate as well is problematic. So a big thing with this work has been solidarity. So we've been working with these 4 populations kind of exclusively in the sense that we really focus on these 4 groups, and we have pilots in about 6 cities across the country, and similar things, bringing the grassroots providers that are doing the good work together in each community and talking about how they work together in their experiences, intersections, but also beyond intersectionality. So, we're learning a lot about each other's issues, the similarities and the distinctiveness. And I'm going to ask you, so what kind of trauma experience have you faced in your life as a trans woman?
So I like to share this because I know I don't want to go over, but I know I like to share this because I basically get a lot of other women who face similar stuff to come to me and say to me they're very inspirational, and I want to do exactly what you do, is get my story out there. So I would be sweet and talk and just say it. I basically fell in love with the wrong person, and basically knowing that I fell in love with the wrong person, a gentleman, basically was very violent when I didn't have money to buy cigarettes for him. I remember basically the punching and choking against the wall, and then falling to the ground and tasting and feeling burning in my eyes felt gasoline in my eyes. So when I basically got up, I remember this part of a movie, and jumping out the window was the best thing than getting burned. So I was on the main floor, jumped out the window. He went to go grab something, I don't know what the hell he's grabbing, but he was grabbing, I guess, a lighter or something. I suppose that's a way to do whatever he was thinking about doing. But I jumped out the window, ran to the first neighbor, they thought they were there, called the cops. The whole cops came. He's in jail as of right now, and I won the case. And scars still happen whenever I'm going past a gasoline store. The triggers, the stuff in my own experience of what I face. It's transgender. I'm like, how can somebody ever do this to somebody, like, over cigarettes? Seriously. I'm like, it's really crazy. Sorry, not crazy, but like very like, wow, right? So ever since then, I wrote my book. I shared this at the Native Women's Resource Center with Doris. That's how I met with Doris. And a lot of women came up to me and was in tears, kissing me on the cheek and saying, you just inspired me. It's like, talking about your story, sharing this made me want to do more stuff in my own community. Either doing like spoken word or writing a book, or anybody can just do whatever they want to do to get their story out there. Talking about it relieves your stress off your chest. That's how I feel. And I'm such like a survivor, so that's what I like to do. And that's my experience of my violence. Now I'm in a better relationship. For 3 years of dating the exact same guy. He's supporting me, and now next year is my bottom surgery. So I'm very happy. Yeah. I'm gonna give it up.
Okay, thank you both for sharing with us. And I'm going to change things up a little bit because I think that if we save time for questions to the very end, you're going to forget what questions we wanted to ask you. So we have 5 minutes for you to ask questions for Rainbow and Doris. Okay? Anyone? Bueller? Bueller? No. Okay, Rainbow, I have a question for you. We know sort of generally and the broad picture of what it is you do, but how do you actually accomplish it? I mean, what kinds of activities do you do on a regular basis? How often does Rainbow Pride come together? That kind of thing. And I'm thinking about, I remember some stuff about costumes that I thought was really interesting, so please include that.
Sure. All right, cool.
Okay, 5 minutes? Okay, cool. All right, so Rainbow Pride Scarborough, first of all, got together back in 2011 with no funding, and I was basically going without, like, struggling with groceries and everything to make this happen. So I'll work my money out to people, like, to make this project happen with no funding. And as I say to people, I'm like the second Ellen DeGeneres, like, but I'm not that rich. But I have a good heart. My heart is full of rainbow colors. Like, I feel the energy going out there, right? So we get together every single possibly week, and we talk about what we want to do, the activities, what we want to see, the different things that the youth want to do, and the people with disabilities that don't have a chance to do certain activities because they're discriminated, or they face homophobia, transphobia, sexism, racism, ableism, the whole isms out there. And so we get together, we talk over coffee, we plan what we want to do in our community, and we try to fight for things. We do outreach, we perform, we do a big event every year. I partnership up with 12 agencies right now, and all of this magical that just because I'm always on emails until 2 in the morning every day. I love my work. I'm passionate, my heart's out there. I don't want to see the youth face what I face, and I don't face what they face because I'm not that lovely person, right? Like, I'm not stepping my shoes in their shoes to see, because I don't know how it's like to face certain things. I'm not, But I like to learn from people and take their energy. And we get together, we have a good time. A lot of my youth are very artistic. They love to do art. They're also talking to Doris, and I'm another lovely person, and trying to get some more connections out there and make this happen for Scarborough community. It's very isolating from the LGBTQ part spectrum. And that's work I've been doing now for almost 8 years out of my own energy. And now, since I just got funded 2 years ago from OTF and their amazing funders and their youth-led, I'm basically doing all of the director work. It's a lot of work. Emails, budget, token, everything. It's a whole essay. But yeah, it's just a lot of work, and I'm very happy that they chose me as a lived experienced person, and I give other people a chance to be employed and volunteer and everything. It's just a very awesome stuff we're doing with like people with physical disabilities, mental health, homelessness, drug users, sex workers, we're very open to allies too to help and support us and volunteer. It's amazing.
Rainbow. Can you also tell us how the funding came about? Who wrote the proposal and all of that sort of thing that made this happen, so that you didn't have to be taking money out of your own pocket to get it going?
Okay.
So I basically wrote the grants all by myself. I did a call out to OTF and I was talking about what I want to do, and they were very inspired. And they sent me to the right grant application to fill out. So it took me almost 4 months of sitting there writing a grant. And then when I finally got a call and I was like, when they called me and said that I was like shortlisted, so it means that it's good. I was actually, my project of 41 others was chosen out of 260 applications. And yeah, they were very inspired, and I was very happy, and I was crying actually going to a presentation at school, at a school. I got a call from my funder manager, and it's like, yeah, you got the grant. I'm like, this is amazing. Like, this is awesome. And I met, we had a party, we did conferences, we do this, and now I'm sharing this opportunity with my youth that want to do their own stuff in their community, and teach them how to write grants. And I'm very educated, like very like good at writing grants. I'm always like speaking from my heart. And yeah, so yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. I'm going to hear from a couple of other really amazing people now. Melanie Marsden. At Springtide Resources, Melanie enjoys networking with other organizations as well as providing education and awareness through a cross-disability lens. In the future, she looks forward to making Springtide a household name by expanding upon their networks. She also serves on the Accessibility Consumer Advisory Committee at Nellie's, a Toronto women's shelter and a community-based feminist organization, and is a current member of the Health Standards Committee for AODA. She has a bachelor's degree in social work and hopes to complete her master's of social work focusing on Aboriginal elder teachings. As a parent of 3, she is pleased to continue parenting work as the coordinator of SPIN, a strength-based parenting initiative. In her spare time, she's a pilot. No. In her spare time, she enjoys spending time with family, friends, listening to music, playing the piano, singing, cycling, and traveling. Melanie. Sandra Tavares is someone that I see around from time to time and always enjoy seeing. Sandra is 39 years old. She's a parent with a child who also has a disability. She's 10 years old. The child. Sandra's not 10, she's 39. I'm in a relationship with my daughter's father, and, no, she's in a relationship. I told you I was on that list about 6 times. We travel as a family, and we like doing that, and she likes to help, and she would, if she could do anything at all, she would change the world.
So, Sandra, I'm just wondering, what is something you want the audience to know about you that hasn't been said?
Good morning, my name is Sandra. I am a very strong person. 39 years old. I'm very happy to be here. And my daughter is 10 years old. And we travel as family, me and her father.
Sandra, maybe it would help if I just talked with you a little bit. We had a bit of a conversation and take a little bit of pressure off. Okay, good. There you go.
So when I first got the opportunity and privilege to meet you, Sandra, one of the things that was really great to hear is about your strength and that you want to change the world. And I'm wondering what that's about. What would you like to change?
I do, because when I first got pregnant, people had their doubts about being a parent.
And you're an amazing, amazing parent. We know that. And we know that oftentimes society is what gets in our way, right?
Yes.
They say you can't be a parent. You're like, are you kidding me? I'm going to prove them wrong.
Yes, I did prove everybody wrong. Very successful in life. I do like to travel, and I'm a strong person. I help my daughter, myself, and the father, because the father is not disabled, so the father doesn't know how it feels. And I just feel like sometimes he doesn't know half of the things I know. Because my mother came here when I was 7 years old. I didn't know nothing. So my mother did not know nothing about resources. So she never got the resources for me. So I was 16. So I thought, okay, I'm normal. Like, I never thought to myself as disabled. And so for me, knowing at 16 that I was different, and then at 29 years old, I was pregnant. And I thought to myself, oh no, it's not only me anymore. I have to worry about another person. So therefore, I'm like, I need to get the resources for myself and for my daughter. So I did. I always got the resources. I always knew I wanted to work, but not knowing how to read, that kind of holds me back on what I want to do in life. I want to help people. I want to share. I want to teach people, and because I don't know, because of my struggle in life, I can never do that. That's why I'm so happy to be here right now to speak.
And I remember you told me when you first found out you were pregnant, you were like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to make sure I have all the resources in place that I want to be a good parent.
Yes.
Even though your in-laws were like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you know what? My in-laws, they were never into me from the beginning. So, thank God, I have a really, really supportive boyfriend. Now that I could say husband, because I've been with him for too long.
And you're still standing.
Yes, I'm still standing. But he's my rock. He's my rock.
And you have one daughter, right? That's, and then you have
One daughter, and she has autism.
So you're not only supporting yourself, like you said earlier, you're making sure that she has the resources that she needs.
Yes.
And despite societal prejudices, right, you kept
Yes.
on going.
Yes, I'm still going. I'm still going.
So as a service provider, what would you like service providers to do differently, or what would you like to give them in terms of recommendations?
I would really, really, really like for more resources out there.
What kind?
Resources on
Like filling out forms?
filling out
or-
forms, helping these people, and making sure that, social groups, and they all need friends. We all need friends. And that's really important.
And in terms of the peer support, like what about being with other parents and your daughter to go places? Would that be helpful too?
Yes, it's really helpful. It's really helpful to know that someone cares and that someone will be, there if you to come visit or to give a call or something, because it's really hard. It's really hard.
And I remember you talked about, so when you first found out you were pregnant, you wanted to put a plan in place. So would some of those plans be making sure you have your support?
Yes, that was my plan. My plan was I always wanted to get support for me and my daughter. So I wasn't afraid to ask for help. I was never afraid to ask for help. It's okay to ask for help. We all need help.
And so one of the things that I really try to do in my work is to try to make sure that whoever I'm working with, that the plan that we'd be working, say if I'm working with you with the plan, that you are leading the plan and I'm only there to support. Is that the way you like the plan?
Yes.
Can we talk about that?
The way I would like it would be like, my goals in life for my daughter is very high, for myself and for my daughter. I still have problems filling out those forms, and I need to help with that.
And writing the goals down on a computer with you, or with what's the best way, like with
writing it down or whatever. It's like that piece. I really need that piece for to help. I need some support.
and that you're included in the process all the way through,
Yes.
right? Like I wouldn't do anything without you unless you asked me to.
No.
And if I did, I know you'd tell me.
Yes. Oh, I will. Very strong advocates for my daughter and for myself. Thank you. I'm very blessed to be here. I'm very honored. I'm very honored to be here right now because I do want to make a difference in my life, in my daughter's life, and everybody's life. Thank you.
And I think I would just add a few things, if I may. There's been a fair bit of talk around the whole intersectionality piece earlier, and I just want to add that that's but one piece of it. So the person that you're working with needs to direct exactly what they want, and it may or may not be what we as service providers think is okay, but it doesn't matter. It's what the individual wants, and we direct them in the best way that we can. So, for example, someone comes to you and they're expecting, and their family's really upset, right, with them. It's not about, oh, don't worry, just get over it, okay? We've got to acknowledge those feelings that are happening with that individual. I think the other thing is that the solutions that we use oftentimes are outside of the box, with the powers that be. There's boxes that we have to check off, and I understand that piece. However, I can let you know that one of the experiences that I had is working with a mom, which I have permission to use this example, so I want to make that really clear. And the mom has an intellectual disability, but did not have the supports that Sandra has. And so we went to court, and for her to get her child back because the child had been apprehended. I'm leaving some pieces out for obvious reasons. And then when the judge said, yeah, you can have your child back, say it was in May, you can have your child back in May, we're in court in April, and you have to have all the things put in place in that month's time frame. And that is so unrealistic, so you're setting up an individual to fail from the get-go. So there's a lot of things that society does and that the systems that we are working in do to undermine folks that are labeled with intellectual disabilities. She got the child. However, because of the tight time frame, the child got taken back again because all the resources weren't able to be put in place. And I apologize in advance, but sometimes we're going to hear some hard things that we don't really want to hear, and this might be a tad bit uncomfortable. But the CAS workers, when I was on the stand, asked me one question. The question was, how do you walk around the hotel with your guide dog? It wasn't about the mom. It wasn't about questions they had at all. Right? So, yeah, just want to put that out there. Okay. I could go on, but I'm not going to. Oh, yeah, actually, I will say one thing. So, I would rather that people challenge each other, right? Ask those uncomfortable questions that are hard to hear, because that's how we move forward, right?
We have a question from one of the panel members for Sandra.
I know Sandra for a long time, and I went to school with her. She's an amazing friend, but we've been untouched for a long time. So now we get to see her. I get to see her when there's presentations or projects. So Sandra, your daughter who has autism, does her classmate bully her? And what the teacher does?
Thank you, Maria. It's a very good question. Me as a mom, when I put my daughter through school, I would start to fight to put her in a special needs room because I knew she cannot. She cannot be in a regular room. She will be lost, I thought to myself. So I went down to my neighborhood school, and I said, and I brought all the forms, and I said to myself, listen, my daughter has a disability. I need to see the special needs room. I did not have an appointment. And the principal looked at me and said, you need an appointment, ma'am. And I said, okay, I just want you to remember my face. I want you to remember my face because my name is Sandra, and my daughter is Monica. And believe me, she will not, and I repeat, not go into a regular room because she has autism. And then myself and my boyfriend, my daughter's father, we had to call the school board trustee every day. Every day we called, okay? And they said to us, your daughter needs a fair sense of life. And I said to them, thank you for telling me this, but I am the mother, and I know what's right for her. So from then, I called and I called and I called. And then it turned out the school that I wanted her to go to, they had the space for her. So right there, I was more relaxed because I knew to teach her and I was relaxed. But I had to fight to her to go to a specialty room. And that was my first fight. And I know, it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. And you know what? I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it.
Well, that was very instructive. Thank you both. So the last two members of our panel, Fran Odette. Fran, give us a wave. I know everybody knows Fran. Go ahead, clap. It's all right. It says here that Fran Odette is a feminist and disability rights activist for over 25 years, but I suspect Fran was born a feminist and has been in the disability rights field for 25 years. With a focus on intersections between gender, disability, and sexualities, Fran brings a wealth of knowledge on the issues for survivors of gender-based violence through her research, writing, and programming in agencies working to end violence against women. Fran was the program manager at Springtide Resources, formerly known as Education Life Assault, a diverse provincial organization whose mandate it is to develop programs aimed at responding to growing prevention, intervention, and educational needs of those working towards ending violence against women and their children. In addition, Fran has been involved in working on issues related to disability and sex positivity, providing training to sexual health providers and people with disabilities. Much of Fran's activist work has been in collaboration with agencies that work with marginalized communities, including engagement and collaborative work, working within women's shelters, legal and counseling services in the GTA, and across the province. As a trainer, educator, Fran's work has been supporting service providers in building capacity to make the linkages needed to ensure that persons with disabilities, inclusive of their gender identity and sexualities, to have access to services. Fran co-authored with Corey Silverberg and Dr. Miriam Kaufman a book entitled The Ultimate Guide to Sex and Disability for All of Us Who Live with Disabilities, Chronic Pain, and Illness. Fran has been teaching at George Brown College since 2008 in the Assaulted Women and Children's Counselor Advocate Program. Excellent program. And she co-developed and co-teaches a critical disability issues course entitled Disability Discourse, The Experienced Life. Thank you, Fran. And sitting next to her and talking with her is Maria Traciti.
Hi, everybody.
Maria is one of those rare people who was born and raised in Toronto and has lived her entire life here. Not many of them around. She currently lives independently in the community and is married to her husband, Sandy. Got married to her husband, Sandy, last year. Congratulations. She has a cat named Lucky. Maria works at Loblaws now and is very committed to her work. She also loves sports. Besides playing on a basketball team, she also coaches floor hockey and baseball. Maria's life is great right now, but it hasn't always been easy. But she won't give up. We all need support from one another, and having love in her life and people who believe in her has got her through some hard times. So please welcome Maria.
Okay. So,
Maria,
yes.
maybe what we're going to do is you and I are going to go back and forth
Okay.
with our questions. So I get the honor to ask you the first question.
Sure.
So what would you like the audience to know about you?
Well, I got my job at Loblaws from a friend of mine. His name is James. I like helping customers and putting labels on bottles and putting things away. I have a lot of friends at work. I work a lot and I enjoy it. Okay. Now, friend, what would you like the audience to know about you?
25 years. My experience is really about coming to find my own services when I was coming out of an abusive relationship. And that was 30 years ago. And at that time, I was living in a city that had no resources for women with disabilities who were experiencing violence. I went to a support group. I was hauled up and down the stairs in my manual chair because there was no elevator. I had the paratransit driver bring me up and down and just held my breath every single time I had to go. But I committed to going because I needed to work through the things that I needed to work through. I later went for individual counseling in an organization that was amazing and offered so many services, but had to enter through the back door. So it was a result of my own journey and my own efforts to try and find supports for myself that I really wondered what was it like for other women, and feeling so very alone when I was going through it. And so, I do a lot of work with service providers to make sure that all of you don't forget about us. Ensure that we are providing a trauma-informed, inclusive, anti-oppressive, or intersectional approach to the work. And, taking that also to another step, is really thinking about sexuality and disability, and that people with disabilities are sexual. We can be awfully sexy people. And I truly believe that, and I feel like having, sex positivity and healthy sexuality is so, so important for all of us. So that's a little bit about this. Maria, I want to say that I am sorry that you experienced being assaulted, and I'm wondering if you could talk about what were some of the things that helped you, what supports did you have?
I was assaulted by two guys, and actually, I don't want to talk about it because I get so emotional. The second guy that I was assaulted by, he was in jail, but now he's been released. My husband, Sandy, who's up there, he was supportive of me, and he would always come to court with me and being there and supportive. And also, I was scared and nervous. Bruce was a good help as they explained to me about court. They gave me a tour of the courtroom, the room where I would be sitting. Barb was amazing, and I had one of the best lawyers. I like how Barb helped me feel less stressed. She gave me chocolates and a bunch of crossword puzzles to help me and a stuffed animal. The crown attorney who supported me was amazing too. Her name is Mahali. Detective Allen was also very supportive. Tammy worked at Victim Witnesses, and she was helpful too. I wouldn't even have them in my life right now if it wouldn't be for them. I also had Vanya as a counselor. Leah and Catherine from Options. They helped me with my confidence, helped me relax. They gave me tips for court, like bringing crossword puzzles. My father, mother, and sister, they were also my rock. They were supportive.
Maria, you remind me that there are actually people out there who, even in the systems that make it very difficult for women to come forward, that there are people in those systems that are uncomfortable.
Yes,
I'm glad to hear.
thank you. Fran, what you like, sorry, what are the some things that help you?
When I was going through that experience, I also had my own Vanya. Vanya, you were transported many years ago. I think what really made a difference is that I was validated in really trying to understand my experience. I had someone that wasn't trying to convince me that the person that was abusing me was just a good person and they were having a hard day. They were someone who was trying to ensure and maintain power and control over me. And I later find out has continued to do that in their relationships after being in a relationship with me. So I think also what was really important is that counselor helped me understand and challenge some of the myths that I had about what it meant to live with disability and, be abused. Because oftentimes it's framed as you should be grateful for having someone in your life. Why do you want to challenge that? Why do you want to disrupt that? No one's going to love you like this person. And getting the same messages that I had from my family. So I lived in silence for a very long time after coming out of that relationship because the last thing I wanted them to know was that I had this experience for the fear that they would continue to see me as fragile. And so it was really important to work through that with the person who was my Vanya back then. And that I didn't deserve this. Yeah.
I agree about Vanya, because Vanya she was an amazing counselor. She helped me a lot. We did a lot of art therapy. Thank you, Vanya, for all your support.
So how are you doing now, and what's better for you?
Now I am working and going to school. I am working on my writing so that I can move on and go to college. I want to work with people with disabilities to be a support to them. I got married and I have a wonderful husband who cares about me and is supportive. Why do you think survivors who are labeled need to be part of the learning of students? And who are you learning to work in the field, as well as workers who have been part of the movement in 4 years?
Interesting question. I think what I really want to remind us is that women with disabilities, we are not invisible. We are part of every community that you are already working with. You just may not know that. And I think it's really imperative and important that you come into that work prepared. As students that are moving through different programs, social work or assaulted women, children, even child and youth programs, we need to acknowledge that those communities have also experienced different forms of trauma and being able to work from that perspective. I also think that we need to be aware that women with disabilities experience homophobia, sexism, racism, and classism, and transphobia, and the mix of those are also forms of violence. We are parents, we are sisters, we are mothers, and we are your friends. So we are here in your life and want to remind you of that. And I think also just before we sort of move over to Maria, that in coming up with this panel, if I can say, I think it was really important that we didn't have survivors and have panels of experts be separate, because many of us who are doing this work are also survivors. And I think it's really important to recognize and honor that as part of what we're doing in this work. So you have a panel of experts. How we come to that is really important, but I think it's important not to segregate people because of their lived experience. So Maria, as we kind of wrap up our time together, I'm wondering if you can tell me what's something that you're proud of in terms of what you've done.
So some of the things I am proud of now, I have a cat named Lucky. She's so precious. She makes me feel calm and relaxed and warm. I got married. I am involved with Arch as a self-advocacy. I love sports, and I'm involved in a lot of teams. I don't know if people know about Arch. Arch is a self-advocacy. Actually, Sue Hudson is here. She does this group every month, and so I've been involved with this. Actually, I just started this year with self-advocacy. I encourage the people who have disabilities, like children, adults. We want a program to go to self-advocacy, because you'll do a lot of stuff, and yeah.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So we do have just about 4 minutes if there were a couple of really, really quick, easy questions for any of our last 4 panelists. Yes. Karen.
Sorry again. Hi everyone. So sorry. Just to add to what you had mentioned, with Sue Hutton doing the self-advocacy work, CLT Toronto also has a self-advocacy group that we facilitate once a month, so every third Wednesday. So if anybody has a client or somebody that they're looking at asking to join the Self-Advocates Council, that's something that you can connect with Arch, either with Arch Disability Law Center. Sue can give you the information for that. But while she's on secondment, I'm going to be running the advocacy groups. So CLT as well, you can contact them. They can give you the information about that. So yeah, just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Tara. Anybody else?